Welcome to your Webbie with Christine Collins. Hey lovelies, welcome to our quickie Webbie. We're going to have some fun today with goodies and prizes too. So here's how it works for prizes. First of all, every single person who signed up to the Webbie, whether you're here live or watching the replay, will get a magical prize when you email me a question about today's material. I'd just love to know what things came up for you as you were listening. Welcome to Neuro-Informed Messaging. Right now, as we are chatting here today, someone may be landing on your offer post or sales page or discovering you for the first time. How is that message resonating for them? And have we constructed an environment that makes them feel both excited and safe to buy from you? So today we're going to chat through some insights that will help to make your messaging and marketing more connecting based on your clients' neuroscientific needs as they're engaging with your offers. We'll take a look at how to make our messaging more inclusive based on those decision-making styles and peek at marketing from a neuro-informed perspective. Now, you may already know a little bit about me, but very briefly, I'm Christine Collins, and I help intuitive solopreneurs with niching, desire-based marketing, and messaging for your clients, as well as mindset support for you through hypnosis, EFT, and yoga nidra. Together, we can ensure that your messaging magically attracts that niched, aligned client while also taking good care of you and your mindset. My background is in both psychology and marketing with a master's in both, and I'm also a certified master NLP hypnotherapist, EFT practitioner, and yoga nidra instructor. So let's talk a little about what desire-based marketing is and isn't. When you think about any negative message that you have ever received, whether it's been in recent years from someone else's marketing or from an ex or a partner or going back to your childhood, when you really dissect it, you can find an underlying motivation. Their negative messaging about you or towards you came because they either wanted you to do something or to feel something that benefited them in some way. And they may not have been fully conscious of this, but the messaging that we received about being deficient in some area, it's either about power and control, like getting us to feel inferior, or it's about getting us to do something, like to buy something. And when we take this in through the lens of marketing, we can look at the bigger picture of how we have been traditionally marketed to as women. We're given a lot of messages about our flaws, a lot of messages about areas to improve. We need to stop procrastinating. We need to be better communicators. We need a cleaner house, or we need to look better, or even that we need to feel better. And just to clarify, I'm not suggesting that all self-improvement is a problem in terms of marketing. It really just depends on the intention of the marketer and on which emotions they try to invoke. For example, is it getting you stuck in shame, or is it extending hope for a better experience? We can often come away with the message that we're just not organized enough, motivated enough, intelligent enough, goal-driven enough, and that underlying message becomes not enough. It's like we're being told we need to get our shit together, we need to get help to get off our butt, we need to be held accountable. One of my least favorite words, like we're a little child standing in the corner for being naughty. And that's just not true. That's not what we need. It's what we've been told that we need. We are not inherently bad or naughty, needing someone to put us in time out to get things done. Usually, rather than us being naughty and needing to be held accountable, we are exhausted and needing sleep, or confused and needing guidance, or frightened and needing confidence, or distracted and needing inspiration. And that negative marketing message can really seep down deep if we're not attentive to it. So the reality is that we're all actually hypnotized about something, all different kinds of things. We're usually not aware of it. It can start at a very young age, but everyone is hypnotized about certain things, certain beliefs that we have developed due to someone else's messaging over the years. So we know that hypnosis can be used for good, for healing, and for transformation. And it can also be used to unhypnotize some of those negative messages that we got early on. It can also help us to move gently towards more positive or optimistic beliefs. But unfortunately, a combination of messaging from all of those negative messengers, whether it was family, exes, or companies who want our money, it can have a very negative effect of creating beliefs in us that we are lacking in some way. And often that occurs well below the line of our consciousness. So as marketers ourselves, it's important to consider the language that we use and how much of our marketing focuses on things like pain points or dialing up negative emotion. Our focus is on desire-based marketing. Desire is important even within our niching process. It involves understanding her desire for a particular dream or outcome and then messaging to that desire. Being able to understand and articulate her desire is part of how we attract her. We call her in with excitement for what she can have and do and become, rather than trying to get her to experience fear or shame or emotional upset over where she is. We don't need to do harm in the process of our marketing. So I would just like to open us off by saying, we don't do that here. We don't play that game here. In our world of desire-based marketing, we can compassionately acknowledge someone's struggle or challenge and be empathetic to their pain without using it to try to make a sale. So I'd just like to draw that distinction for us early on. There's a big difference between understanding and speaking to her challenges in an insightful way versus using it intentionally to dial up a negative emotion, getting her to feel so utterly crappy about her life that she feels the only way to escape that feeling is to buy something to fix it. The important thing here is that people really do remember how you make them feel, which will go a very long way with building a connected relationship over the long term. And that's with everyone who follows you, whether or not they ultimately become your clients. So our goal is to show our aligned client how she can expand her horizons and grow into something that feels really exciting and good to her, while honoring her needs in the sales and marketing process. Now, sometimes when we're scrolling, we'll see those ads that will pop up in our newsfeed that intentionally dial up pain and shame and discomfort, and they might come across as effective. I know I've clicked on a few myself at different times, but I invite you to consider this little bit of neuroscience. As a hypnotherapist, one of the key things we understand about the subconscious mind is that it does have difficulty with processing a negative or with processing the absence of something. So if I would say to you, whatever you do, don't think of a pink cloud. Almost as soon as I say that, your brain automatically starts to conjure up an image of a pink cloud just so it can then follow my instruction to cancel it out. It just doesn't work very well. It would actually be a lot more effective to focus on moving towards something else, something that is wanted or desired. So to give you an example, when a client says something like, I want to avoid eating sugar, or avoid eating salt, or avoid eating chips. Unfortunately, for the person who is wanting to avoid those chips, avoid those chips, avoid those chips, the way that this translates down into our subconscious is just chips, 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 because we really can't process the absence of something. We focus in on the very topic that we had wanted to avoid, and it actually places a focus on the very thing that that client was hoping to get away from. So if we take this understanding and apply it to our messaging and marketing, offering her something delightful that she could move towards and get excited about, we are actually offering a shift towards the desire and new and thrilling options. And that is a whole lot easier than moving away from something. So when we speak about desire-based marketing, in contrast to pain point marketing, not only is that desire-based marketing a higher vibration and better for your client's well-being, it also happens to be more effective. The only reason that I personally could think of neuroscientifically for someone to point a big red arrow at avoiding the chips or avoiding a problem is to keep you stuck in the very thing that you are wanting to change or avoid. And as a certified addiction counselor, something I was in my former life, who spent lots of time with folks who were trying to make those kinds of changes, I can attest that avoidance focuses in the treatment process were highly unsuccessful. giving people something positive to move closer towards is a much easier way for them to actually make movement and also to digest and receive a message. And it also gives them something else that I think is very important, and that is a feeling of hope. Hope is a higher vibration emotion than things like fear or avoidance, or the kind of shame that is often used to try to get somebody to take action just so that they can get away from that feeling of shame or fear or self-loathing or guilt. Instead, we are helping her to move beyond her struggle while encouraging her to grow into something new and exciting, a horizon of beautiful possibilities. And as we're speaking about moving towards something versus away from something, it's the perfect segue into discussing one of the key types of buyer styles or buyer personas. So there's a range of decision-making tendencies that fall onto various spectrums, and they highlight certain needs that we all have in order to feel safe and ultimately be ready to make a purchasing decision. And as we speak about each of these spectrums, it's important to note that one end of the spectrum is not any better or worse than the other. We're all just different, and that we may fall anywhere along that spectrum. It's not necessarily an all or nothing where we're all the way to the left or all the way to the right. And it can also vary across different types of decisions. So the first of these spectrums has to do with whether someone is most incentivized to move towards something delightful or incentivized to move away from something painful or unpleasant. And it's largely because of this buyer style, unfortunately, that we will see some of that pain point marketing out there, because it is perceived as an effective way to capture this group of people by dialing up their pain. But as we have already discussed, that type of intentionally toxic pain dialing marketing really does leave out huge groups of the audience, not to mention the crappy emotional baggage that it carries. So with this first buyer style or persona, it's related to being either towards motivated versus away motivated. So you'll have a percentage of people that are motivated mostly to take action based on their desire to move towards something exciting, while another group is more highly motivated to drive themselves away from something painful or unpleasant. We can understand these unique differences without using them to be manipulative. Rather, it just gives us the compassion and the insight to better understand their lived experience. We can show them that we get it. We understand their situation. We can show our empathy and compassion without deliberately dialing up their pain or making them feel worthless just so that they'll buy something. And when we speak from the heart with understanding with what she's going through, it creates a safe space for her to feel seen and understood, which is obviously worlds apart from using that understanding in a sleazy way to shame her or cajole her into a decision. So here we can speak to the journey and the challenges or the relevant heartache or emotion, but then we ultimately want to nudge her towards that hopeful feeling that lies in what is possible for her. Another spectrum of buying styles has to do with someone making a decision based on their own reflection and thinking about it versus a group of people who absolutely must be able to talk to someone else and have a conversation about it with someone else first. So the folks that need to have that outside conversation would be considered external decision makers. They just simply need to be able to talk to a friend, a partner, a family member in order to process through their decision. In contrast, folks who are internal decision makers are more motivated by their own insights. They kind of go off into their cave and think through their decision and weigh it out for themselves, the pros and the cons, and they do it mostly on their own. And once again, neither is better or worse. For the external decision makers, they simply cannot make a decision without getting a weigh-in from another party. That could be a partner, a family member, a friend, or in some cases, they may need to hear from your previous clients. And this is where having testimonials can be very relevant. So, just a little PSA about testimonials. Testimonials are not about us showing off how great we are or how wonderful our clients think we are. That is actually not their purpose. They are actually an integral part of the decision-making process for external decision makers for the folks who need to hear from someone outside of themselves. Some people really do just need to get that third-party insight or explanation from someone who has gone through the experience. It gives them reassurance that someone else has done this, someone has gone through the process of working with you, and it's real, it's legit, and they had a good experience. So it's important for us to honor those needs. We would never want to tell someone that they should figure it out for themselves. That's just being very dismissive of this particular buyer style. And in some cases, it's not even about a buyer style. There could be an agreement that they have within their household with their partner or their family in terms of their purchasing decisions. And we would never want to come in between someone's agreements with their partner or family. So as we're interacting with potential clients, we could ask ourselves, does this client need to check in with a partner or someone else? Do they need to see some testimonials? And have we made those readily accessible somewhere on our website or social media so that it's very easy for them to find? We could also avoid asking for any kind of an on-the-spot decision and instead give them the time and the opportunity to sleep on it or speak to someone else if they should need to. And we can forgive ourselves for anything that we may have done in the past mistakenly because of what we just didn't know. Today, we are older and wiser, and so from today, we can do it differently. So another buying spectrum has to do with length of time that someone needs to make a decision. Some people can make decisions very quickly, and there are others who need considerably more time to research. So, for example, if you have a group of friends that are going out to lunch at a restaurant, you may have one person at the table who can quickly glance over the menu and know exactly what they want right away, or at least by the time the server comes. At that same table, there may be someone else who takes much longer, or maybe they even went and Googled the menu before coming, and ahead of time they read all the descriptions and looked at the pictures and the reviews so that they could think through it, and they may still have a harder time deciding. We might say that that person needs to do a complete study of the details before choosing. So understanding our clients' needs in terms of these purchasing decisions, it's a big part of our responsibility and efficacy as marketers. We never want to put someone in a position where we're pressurizing them to make a decision too quickly that will feel out of alignment because they didn't have enough time. So instead, we can adapt our sales process in a way that accommodates both types of buyers. So on the one hand, you don't want to slow down someone who is of a more spontaneous nature and they know what they want and they're ready to go. And at the same time, we also don't want to create a stressful, high-stakes environment for the person that needs more time. They need to do their research, they need to sleep on it, they need to think it over. And much of this is happening at a subconscious level. Not everyone is aware of their buyer style. I certainly didn't know of these differences myself early on. In fact, I had kind of a funny experience several years ago, a little story that I'll share with you. So this is back from when I was first combining households with my husband, and we were moving from having like all of his old furniture plus all of my old furniture, and we were now ready to finally buy our first couch together. Now, this was quite a few years ago, and it was before I had ever studied NLP or understood these buyer styles. So we had a 3-day sale that we needed to take advantage of for budgeting reasons. And the sale was like a Friday through Sunday. So going in, I actually was naive enough to believe that we were going to walk into that store on a Friday after work, pick out a great affordable couch, and be home in time for dinner that night. That's not what happened though. What actually happened is we went to the furniture store on Friday after work around 5 or 6 o'clock, and we looked at all kinds of options. We asked lots of questions, and the next thing we knew, the store was closing. It was like 10 o'clock at night. So we were there for a solid 5 hours or so, and they had actually already locked the doors, so they had to go and unlock the doors to let us out, and we still had not come to a decision. Now, what I didn't yet understand at that time is that my husband was just not the type of buyer who is ever going to be able to walk into and out of a store with a purchase like that in just a couple of hours. So we went back again the next day. And this time we started a little bit earlier in the day so that we'd have more time. But again, we closed them out at 10 o'clock at night. And again, they had to go and unlock the doors to let us out. And we were still without a couch. I will tell you the story does end happily because on the third day, we went back. Again, we spent a long time, but this time we did end up with the couch and we did end up getting the sale. It just all took much longer than I had ever anticipated, which taught me a very valuable lesson about understanding and respecting the differences between two people's different buyer styles. The reality is that some buyers can look at a thing and say, I like this, it fits in my budget, let's do it. And there are others who need to go home, they need to look at other options, they need to read the reviews, they need to weigh out the possibilities, and most of all, they need time. Time to sit with the decision and the details, time to think it over. So our responsibility as marketers is to be respectful of those differences and also to ensure that our sales process supports the differences. So when you have someone who is spontaneous, you want to make sure that you're giving them all of the information up front, the booking link, the sales button, and everything they need to know so that if they feel that intuitive nudge, that this is a good fit for them with the pricing and the day and time and the outcomes, we can create for them that opportunity to be spontaneous and honor their own wiring to decide quickly. Because sometimes with the spontaneous decision makers, if you force them to wait, it can become more difficult for them to actually come to a decision. Sometimes they will start to second guess themselves. As more and more time ticks past, they start to second guess the initial nudge that they got, and they end up feeling more confused, and they may end up making a poorer choice for themselves because they weren't able to jump in when they felt ready. I have had those experiences myself of feeling like something was good and it felt right and I was ready, and for one reason or another I held back. Maybe I thought I was being too impulsive. Maybe there was something in the process itself that slowed me down. But through that waiting, that hesitation ultimately led me to a less desirable outcome. And of course, the same thing can be said on the other end of the scale with the research-based folks that need to do that complete study. We want to give them enough time to weigh it out in the way that they need to. And during that time, while you're giving them the opportunity to reflect on it, you can continue to offer interaction through your content. You can allow them to know, hey, I'm here, I can answer questions, and offer any additional details along the way that could be relevant for them to include in their research. So when we're thinking about incentives or offers and special deals, we can make sure that we're honoring those differences to our best ability. That might mean rethinking common marketing tendencies to offer like a 24-hour window or even a 48-hour window, which can make it really hard for the person who is the complete study and needs to research and think through it. And also, an overly tight time frame is an issue for the people that need time to read testimonials or chat to a partner. Those kinds of things may need to happen for them like over a weekend, for example. And for the spontaneous folks, if we talk about something and then don't allow them to purchase right away, or if your sales process is really hard to get through, it's like long and tedious, the button is hard to find, or they have to scroll and scroll for an eternity on a website just to get to the checkout button, they may just give up and leave because they wanted to be able to do it right then in the moment when they were ready. So it's helpful if we can have arrangements that really work well for both types of people. And doing that, we can be inclusive of everybody and not leave out the poor guy who just needed that extra time to decide about their couch. Now, another interesting buyer style has to do with how much and which types of information a person needs to make their purchasing decision. And that can range from having a big picture or bird's eye view of the goal versus having access to all the little details, the logistical pieces, the where, the when, on what platform, at what time. Sometimes I see marketing advice that I think is really unhelpful, that tells people things like, don't include the little details, just talk about the big picture outcomes. But in the context of what we're discussing today, that can be very minimizing for the clients who really need those details. It minimizes their very valid concerns about things like the day of the week or the time of day, the frequency or the length of the service. And that can make it hard for them to make a decision because they don't feel safe, and that can harm the entire relationship and lead to more refund requests. And of course, there are people who need the big picture overview, so definitely recommend including that. There's nothing wrong with talking through big picture goals or outcomes of your program or service. But there are just as many people who genuinely need to have those little details to make their decision. For example, if something is happening at a particular day and time, and in order for them to maximize their investment, they really need to be there live and not just watching a recording, then we need to include that information before we're asking for their money. Why should anyone have to pay for something if they don't know whether it will work with their schedule? It doesn't make sense to say, okay, here's the payment link, but we'll announce later when the times are. So they've already paid and they don't know going into it if they can actually attend. And even beyond the buyer styles that we're talking about, there are obviously other scheduling constraints that can make it impossible for a decision to be made without having the logistics. People have children and jobs and family commitments and then their own business commitments. It's one thing if they're fully informed ahead of time that an event is like happening in the middle of the night for them or on a Sunday or a holiday, and they intentionally go into the purchase aware of that and accepting of that. But if there was a lack of transparency with those details, it becomes a very imbalanced power dynamic because they were not fully informed before handing over their money. So we can utilize platforms like Acuity Scheduling or Google Calendar or any number of tools that exist to allow transparency for the date and the time, the platform, and the setup before they make the purchase. We can offer details like what will it look like? Where does it happen? Is it on Zoom? Do they need to have the internet? Do they need something else to participate? And another benefit of giving them some of these details is that it allows for them to begin visualizing what it will look like and feel like as they are going to participate. We know that the act of visualizing helps to create our future reality. The more we can step into that visualization with all of the sensory details and the logistical details, the more likely they may actually be to make that a reality for them and to buy because they've been able to visualize themselves doing it and it feels good to them. So when we provide those little details up front, it also creates an informed buyer and allows them to make a choice that will feel good to them. And in doing so, we reduce disappointment, mismatch, and refund requests. So I would say providing those details, it's not a distraction. It is actually neuroscientifically essential for many people to have that information. And this goes a long way in creating really great, satisfying relationships and experiences that will be lasting with our audience. So changing it up slightly, we have what I have dubbed neuroscience smooth moves. And these are just a handful of quick and easy little things that you can do to neuro up your marketing and your messaging that will allow us to maximize brain engagement on the client side and the capacity for our audience to actually take in and absorb our content. Because as solopreneurs, we juggle a lot, we wear a lot of hats, we put a lot of effort into our work, and it's so helpful if we can maximize the time that we have available to its full potential to make your messaging really work for you. So the first one here is that from a neuroscience perspective, we have about 20 seconds to make something relevant from their very first glance on a post or a blog to where it is relevant to them. So if we have some kind of big, long, chunky text introduction that's not really related to the key point, it can be very disengaging. If after those first 20 seconds we haven't made it relevant to them, we've already lost them. They've already scrolled past. So there are some ways that we can draw them in naturally, things like telling a story or asking a question or having some engaging visuals. If you are telling a story, It's important to capture them in the first few lines with something that ties into their own experience that relates to them and makes the story relevant or interesting to them. And then they're more likely to keep reading on even if it's a longer post. Because as you may know, most of us skim over, we don't read every word. Most people only read the first sentence of every paragraph and kind of skim over the rest. So just expect that going in and make sure that you're breaking up your paragraphs for maximum engagement. It helps to have a great opening and tell the story in a way that makes it immediately relevant to them. We can also use questioning to pull them in, asking a direct question or some kind of a call out to a specific group of people. Also using imagery or graphics that are very captivating can be helpful too. And when you do have that longer post, making sure you break it up visually. Doing that with separation, using spacing in between paragraphs. You can use bullets. You can use some emojis. You obviously don't want to overdo those things. But to some extent, breaking things up visually can make a big difference in helping them to follow along and digest it. So that first 20 seconds, we need to grab their attention and make the post or content relevant right away. Number 2, this one is related to how much time you have to deliver your key point before you lose your audience. And that time is 15 to 20 minutes. Humans just aren't capable of taking in material for longer than 20 minutes at a stretch. In the teaching world, we used to call it a brain break. We needed to take a brain break. So what happens is that after 15 or 20 minutes, they will just start to tune out with or without your permission. Their brain will just tune them out automatically. They're not doing it on purpose. It has nothing to do with how interesting you are as a speaker or a writer. It's just neuroscience. It's not realistic for someone to sit still for 90 minutes and listen without taking a break. Otherwise, they're just going to tune right out. So if you have a lot of material, like you're running a longer webinar or training, breaking it up into smaller segments, using little topic switches or pace switching or content change can be very helpful. And ideally, each of those little segments is under 15 minutes. But even better, if you can have a nice, sweet little 5 to 10 minute chunk of things, that's even more engaging. Brain breaks allow the brain to wake up out of its stupor, either by fully stopping or by making a change in your pace or tone or content. You could tell a joke. You could do something unexpected. You could switch gears and talk about something different. You can ask questions and get them involved, or you can have an activity for them. But these little brain breaks help your listener to actually take in the material better. So 15 minutes and then brain break. Otherwise, they'll miss the stuff that you hoped they would hear. So number 3, after teaching them something new or delivering new content, we have 24 hours to make it relevant to their life so that that new material sticks. Otherwise, the mind will just archive it and dump it back out unless it has been made applicable to their life in some way. So we need to find a direct application for that content within 24 hours. The easiest way to do that is to give them a takeaway action item. And because it needs to happen in 24 hours, I highly recommend that it be something really fast, really easy, like 2 minutes. Something they can do instantly. You could have them write something down or put something in their calendar to revisit it later or ask them a question to answer. But ideally, it's something really simple. They can do it in 2 minutes or less and directly apply that new material to their life. And our last little piece here for neuro-informed messaging is around learning styles and how they affect your client's ability to interact with your messaging and marketing. There are 3 overarching categories for learning: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So when you're providing content, whether that's a post, a course, a training, or everyday content, it's helpful if you can engage all 3. Research shows that around 65% of the population are visual learners. That means that they need to see something visual or be able to visually read text in order to truly digest material. You can use infographics, images, you can offer transcripts, you can have written text, you can have your videos be captioned. If you're using slides, you can have some words on the screen, and all of those things help to engage your visual learners. Now, it's around 5% of the population that tends to be purely auditory, which means that they're capable of just listening and learning. Now, that is a rather small percentage, which is interesting to note because in our traditional education, most of it is happening purely auditorily, yet only a tiny fraction of people can actually learn purely by listening. Most people do need visual tools or kinesthetic tools to learn. So then we have our kinesthetic learners, which is around 30% of the population, and they have to learn by doing. They need to do something active or something physical. And it doesn't have to be a big, grandiose action where they're like getting down on the floor and doing push-ups or something. They could actually just write down the answer to a question if they have a workbook or a worksheet. Kinesthetic learners are often our note takers because the act of writing down keywords that they're hearing can help reinforce what they're learning. So when your content supports all three styles, you've got a blend of some visual tools like words on the slide, you have some auditory tools like you're speaking on video or audio, and then something kinesthetic, a physical takeaway or action item. That could be a worksheet or a workbook, maybe something they can write down or something that they can do. And ideally suggesting for that kinesthetic takeaway to happen within those 24 hours for the reasons that we already touched on earlier to make that new learning relevant immediately. So all of this is to help us practice more neuro-inclusivity in our marketing, and just understanding these neuroscientific differences can create more engaging and inclusive content. It's doing small, easy, effective things consistently with your authentic message. Because there are also buyer styles that are related to consistency, and that is how frequently and for how long they need to interact with you and with your content in order to feel safe buying from you, that kind of trust building that happens over time. I think consistency gets misunderstood because it's not about doing something every day or every week. Just as an example, I only do my newsletter once a month, but for the most part, I do it consistently once a month. And I chose monthly as opposed to weekly or something else because that is what I was able to manage consistently. It's more important that you're consistent than that you're frequent. So it's not about doing 3 posts on Facebook every day or hyperactively sharing in 5 different Facebook groups every single day of the week and then completely disappearing for 6 months because you burnt yourself out. It's really just showing up regularly in front of your audience and engaging them with your message and having a relationship with them. It's you being that ongoing, safe, and reliable resource for them. And the more exposure they have to your message, the more likely it is to stick. When neurons fire repeatedly together, they wire together. And that reinforces the neural pathways of a particular thought or education or learning, like your message or your offer or your post. So the more they see your message in a consistent way, the more their thinking actually begins to realign to what that message is. The better they grasp it, the more they believe in it, and ultimately the more likely they are to feel safe working with you. This is why consistency leads to more sales and creates better relationships. So I have for you here a very quick summary of what we chatted through today. Rather than trying to absorb this whole list, I would recommend choosing just one item here from our chat, one thing that you might like to revisit for your messaging. And then maybe just quickly jot it down on a post-it note to come back to it later. You don't need to run off and implement something today. Instead, just pick one thing, write it down, and allow your creative mind to chew on it, maybe over a few days, to see what might come up for you and how it might fit into your own marketing or messaging. So we have speaking to what she can move towards with that focus on her desire, acknowledging the struggle, but marketing to the desire and the vibration of hope, giving someone an opportunity to speak to their partner or family if needed, or offering them testimonials to review for those external decision makers. Ensuring your marketing allows time for decisions and not using those little tight 24-hour windows for sales process or specials. Offering the big picture and the little details for your offers, so talking about the purpose and the outcome, but also giving them upfront the day and the time. Aiming to catch their attention within those first 20 seconds with a question or a story. Not letting your content spill over longer than 20 minutes without a break. offering an easy takeaway item they can do within 24 hours to kind of cement in that new learning, and ideally something simple enough that they can do very quickly. Offering a combination of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic tools. Perhaps it's a slide with text on it, or getting your videos captioned, or offering a workbook or takeaway. And finally, being inclusive and being consistent, however that fits into your capacity to do so. Knowing that being consistent and spread out is better than being frequent but really sporadic and random. So just do your best with all of it. Now today we talked through some really clever ways to captivate your niche client in a more neuro-informed way. And we can take that a step further when we deeply understand who we are messaging to and what she needs to hear from us. So it really helps to understand your niche and to speak to her lived experience, knowing where she is in that client journey towards you and what sort of content will really engage her there. So if you would like to go to the next level and get even more specific messaging and content help, as well as mindset support, I have a really fun self-paced program called Magic in Creation, which is designed for intuitive solopreneurs. We dive into crafting your content in ways that are juicy and effective and sustainable for you. We'll tap into our intuition for the marketing strategy, while also forming plans that are incredibly practical and very easy to implement. We get into some of the tangible tools like SEO for your website and your blogs, getting a lot more clarity on your niche and how to write to her in ways that she can hear you, and you get an array of mindset tools. So since I'm a hypnotherapist and EFT practitioner, I've bundled in a gorgeous hypnosis audio that was crafted just for this program, as well as some EFT tapping videos to support you along your path. I've really taken everything I offer and married it together into this magical little bundle of 7 bite-sized lessons, and it is self-paced so that you are never behind. You can do it at your leisure. And right now, during the month of May, we have an early birdie price of this program, which is $197 US. It will eventually be $297 US. But during this month, that price stays $197, and it comes with 2 really juicy bonuses. So not only do you get the normal lifetime access to all the materials with your program hypnosis audio, right now with Early Birdie, you also get a one-on-one messenger chat check-in, and you get 30 days inside the Hypnopothecary, which I don't normally include. So I'll explain each of those bonuses. So the messenger check-in, it is a one-on-one asynchronous chat through Facebook Messenger. It's an opportunity for you to ask me your questions about marketing, and basically you can just sit on your couch in your jammies and lazily send me a marketing question and get your answers without having to get on camera or come to a meeting at a specific time. If you prefer, you can also use that chat time instead to ask me to review a specific piece of copy or content up to 200 words. So it's up to you. You can either ask me some questions and get answers from me on your marketing stuff, or if you would like to use that time to have me review a piece of copy and make suggestions, then we can do that. So it's up to you to decide how to most effectively use your messenger chat time. Now, the other bonus is a 30-day taster in my Hypnopothecary. And in case you're not familiar with that, it is my online portal that houses all of my hypnosis audios. It's normally a membership, but I'm offering it here as a 30-day taster. And there are around 20 different topics that are covered in there in terms of hypnosis. Everything from stress relief to enhancing creativity to family harmony, grief, anger, sleep, weight release, finances, confidence, motivation. There's lots of magic in there. And there are also several EFT tapping videos, as well as some yoga nidra guided audio journeys for those who love those mindset tools as much as I do. It's a pretty magical little mindset portal with on-demand support. So that means you can hop in there anytime you want and use whatever you need when you need it. And it's a 30-day taster, so you're not signing up for the monthly membership. There's nothing to cancel after. It's just 30 days to trial it out. And if you love it and you want to continue, then you can choose to do that. But there's nothing to cancel if you don't. So just a quick recap for Early Birdie. It will eventually be $297 for Magic and Creation on its own. But right now, the full program plus both of those magical bonuses are all included in the $197 US. So it's a pretty sweet bundle with the marketing and mindset support, the one-on-one, all tied up in a bow for you. So definitely, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them here in the chat box. I'm happy to answer them for you. And we don't have any kind of rush pressure campaign. You have the entire month of May to decide if you're interested in Early Birdie. But definitely feel free to send me questions if you have any. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you coming along today for this journey. It's been really, really fun for me. I hope that you've gained some valuable insights that you can put to good use right away. And whether or not our adventure together continues beyond today, I have genuinely enjoyed spending this time with you, and I wish you a totally magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.